Hello, and welcome to my channel. Today's story takes place in the Bay Area of California. It involves multiple victims in different cities along the Interstate 880 corridor, which I have highlighted on this map. Even though the cities are on the opposite side of San Francisco, they are all considered to be in the Bay Area due to the proximity of the San Francisco Bay. I'm going to tell this story in order of how two cold cases were solved and linked to a convicted murderer, which means I will be bouncing back and forth between now and then. If you had listened to my other videos, you know I like to tell stories in the order in which they unfolded, which sometimes means evidence was not released until years later. The first set of victims were from Fremont. They were 20-year-old Jennifer Duey and 19-year-old Michelle Xavier. They met at Notre Dame High School and became best friends. They graduated in 1984 and were both taking classes at Olin College. They remained inseparable. They both still lived at home with their parents, and both girls had boyfriends. Jennifer Duey was born on December 30th, 1965. She was one of six children. She worked at the cosmetic counter at the Emporium Capwell department store in the Almaden Plaza. She had just turned 20, 32 days before her death. Michelle Xavier was born June 14th, 1966. She had a brother. She worked in the juniors clothing department at Nordstrom's in the Hillsdale Mall. Before that, she worked at Macy's. I'd like to set the record straight on Michelle's age. She was 19 years old. Multiple news outlets report her age as being 18. No, she was 19 and 4 months shy of her 20th birthday. On Saturday, February 1st, 1986, Jennifer and Michelle, along with their boyfriends, attended a party for Michelle's grandfather in Hayward. Their boyfriends left the party before the girls. The girls left around 8 p.m. and made the over 20-minute drive back to Fremont, and they stopped at a friend's house. Later that evening, Michelle and Jennifer were driving in Michelle's Pontiac Sunbird convertible and saw their boyfriends in the parking lot of a 7-Eleven, which was in a small plaza. Michelle did a U-turn, and the girls hung out for a while with their boyfriends. Jennifer told her boyfriend they were probably going to grab a pizza and go home, and she would see him tomorrow. The girls left that location in Michelle's car between 10 and 10:30 p.m. Around 12:30 a.m., which was now Sunday, February 2nd, and approximately 2 hours after the girls were last seen, a man riding his motorcycle on the narrow and secluded Mill Creek Road found the nude bodies of two women. He immediately called police. When the bodies were found, there was no identification. There was a full-length pink coat found near one of the girls' bodies. Their bodies were lying off the road near a gravel turnout with no attempt to hide them. Police believe they were murdered where they were found based on evidence at the scene. Jennifer Dewey's mother said her daughter was usually home by midnight. She turned the porch light on, but when Jennifer didn't come home, she figured she spent the night at Michelle's house. Sunday, around 9 a.m., Jennifer's mother called Michelle's house and was told the girls had not spent the night there. At 1 p.m., Emporium Capwell called Jennifer's house because she hadn't shown up for work. Both families contacted the police department to report their daughters missing. This is when the police learned the identities of the girls found on Mill Creek Road. Michelle's family described Michelle's car, which was also missing. The pink coat found with their bodies belonged to Michelle. Later that Sunday afternoon, which was still February 2nd, Michelle's car was found parked behind a Chevron gas station in the Mission Valley Shopping Center. The car was taken to be processed by the police. Police said the keys were missing and there were no personal items found in the car. Upon immediate inspection, they did not seem to see any signs of a struggle, but they were removing parts of the interior to do a full inspection. Police questioned employees of various businesses in the Mission Valley Shopping Center. They questioned the owner of the Mission Valley Inn, a bar restaurant which at the time was located here and is the closest to the gas station. The owner said he saw the car parked there at approximately 11:15 p.m. They questioned an employee of Runway 32 Pizza, which faced the back of the gas station. It is now a Starbucks, but from the front you could see the back of the gas station. The pizza employee was shown three pictures of the girls, and the sad thing is, he was shown a picture that described the clothing they were wearing in this picture. All of the clothing the girls were last known to be wearing was exactly what was in this picture, except for a full-length black coat and white scarf. Jennifer was wearing it that night, just not in this picture. The pizza employee was familiar with both Jennifer and Michelle. He knew Michelle's car. He said when he left work at approximately 11:20 p.m., the car was not at the gas station, and he would have noticed it. Is it possible that either of these men had their time slightly off, or that the abduction really could have taken place in a 5-minute window? Jennifer's mom said it was Jennifer's habit to pick up a pizza and rent movies for the VCR. She did it quite often and would get the movies and the pizza from the Mission Valley Shopping Center. She couldn't figure out where the girls might have gone if they hadn't been seen at the pizza place, and she said they wouldn't have gone to the bar because they weren't 21 yet. February 5th, 1986. Just like in life, Michelle and Jennifer were inseparable in death. Their families held funeral services for both girls together. Visitation was held at Burge Papa's Smith Mortuary that afternoon, where more than 1,000 people showed up to pay their respects. Following the visitation was a 7:30 p.m. Mass that took place at St. Joseph's Catholic Church. February 6, 1986. Both girls were interred in a private burial ceremony at St. Joseph's Catholic Cemetery. Also on the 6th, Fremont City Council voted to offer a $5,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for Jennifer and Michelle's death. February 7th, 1986. A search warrant to search the home of a man was executed. No further details were given, and in fact, the police hadn't released many details about the murder at this point at all. They did say one of the girls was slashed and the other was shot, but that was about it. February 13th, 1986. The police released the photo that was taken just hours before the girls were found dead. This was indeed the last known photos of the girl. That's so frickin' sad. It did generate about 100 calls to the police. A reward fund had been set up in addition to the $5,000 given by the city of Fremont. At this point, the reward was over $6,000. In March of 1986, Michelle's cousin Jennifer arranged many fundraisers to add to the reward fund. There was an exercise-a-thon, a bowl-a-thon, and a benefit concert, all held in the month of March. The fund was published for citizens to make donations for both girls. Employers donated as well. By April 1986, the reward fund had grown to $35,000. A bulletin was released with the reward money, the last picture of the girls and Michelle's car. At this point, I should mention that there were several unsolved murders in the Bay Area between 1983 and 1984. However, the police did not consider them to be related and denied that they had a serial killer. Jennifer and Michelle were murdered in February 1986, and two other murders occurred in 1986 as well. One occurred in early March, but the killer was found and it was unrelated. Another woman, 20-year-old Dana Lee Rom's nude body, was found on December 29, 1986. She was last seen at a Chevron gas station in Pleasanton on the night of December 28th. This map shows the gas station where Michelle and Jennifer most likely were abducted from and where Dana was abducted from, just over 30 minutes away. At this time, Dana's murder is still unsolved. No idea if they are related, but it sure sounds like it. The years ticked by and there were no arrests nor leads in Jennifer and Michelle's case. Multiple inmates who had committed similar crimes had been questioned throughout the years, but nothing panned out. It would take over 3 decades before that would happen. In 2001, skin found under Jennifer Dewey's fingernails was entered into the DNA database. In 2016, a Fremont Police Cold Case Division was created. Detectives were re examining evidence in Jennifer and Michelle's case. Now we have to go back to 2003. In 2003, a blood sample was taken from David Misch and submitted to the DNA database. His DNA matched the skin found under Jennifer Dewey's fingernails. Remember, the samples from her nails had been in the database since 2001. David was already serving a life for murder he committed in 1989. I will get to that, but I need to stick with Michelle and Jennifer's case first so I can wrap this part up. In 2003, while incarcerated, detectives interviewed David regarding the deaths of Jennifer and Michelle. He claimed to have been pumping gas at a gas station and saw two men dragging Jennifer off. He tried to help, but the men drove away with both girls. He said during his attempt to help, Jennifer may have scratched him, and that's how his skin got under her fingernails. So, you are probably wondering why wasn't he charged back in 2003? Well, it is because during the 2003 interview with David, the detectives realized the recorder had stopped recording halfway through the interview. Weeks after the interview, they attempted to question David again, but he recanted his story. It has never been made public why he hadn't been charged after the DNA findings, regardless of a taped confession. It would be another 14 years before he would be questioned again, which now brings us to 2017. In August of 2017, detectives presented the case and evidence to the district attorney's office. Over the course of the next several weeks, detectives continued working on the case and re-interviewed witnesses, family members, and David Misch. September 8th, 2017, detectives once again questioned David in the murder of Jennifer and Michelle. He repeated the story he told in 2003. 4 days later, he attempted to take himself out in his jail cell. He wrote a note to his brother that said, "Sorry it had to be this way, yet it protects you and Mom from the circus it would have become. All the questioning and embarrassment none of you deserve. They'd never let me out now." March 2nd, 2018, the district attorney's office filed 2 counts of murder against David Misch in Alameda County. David was arrested while in custody. He would not go to trial until 2024 due to delays with the pandemic, him having to be prepared to transfer to another prison. Plus, he had more charges filed against him for a kidnapping in 1988, which I will get to. October 21st, 2024, David Misch's trial began for the deaths of Jennifer and Michelle. It lasted 6 weeks. At trial, testimony revealed that Michelle had been slashed from ear to ear in the throat and that Jennifer had been shot 3 times in the back in what looked like an attempt to escape. Michelle had written letters and numbers on the palm of her hand, which was within a digit or two of a license plate registered to David Misch's motorcycle in the 80s. However, at the time of the crime, the detectives didn't know what the writing may have stood for. It was also revealed that the seats in Michelle's car did have blood on them. The girl's clothing was found at the scene, which hadn't been disclosed before either. Only the pink coat was mentioned. At trial, it was said their clothing were found hanging from tree branches and on the barbed wire fence in the area where their bodies were found. The man who found the girls' bodies was actually a judge for Alameda County, and he and his wife had been riding on Mill Creek Road and made the discovery. The judge was no longer alive to testify, but his 90-year-old wife was, and she described how they came up on the bodies and the clothing hanging from the barbed wire fence. This douchebag testified in his own defense. This time he claimed he was Michelle and Jennifer's drug dealer. He said he met Jennifer at the mall with his shoplifting ring, which she was aware of. He said he had given Jennifer his pager number and the girls contacted him to buy cocaine. He said he agreed to meet them at the gas station. While there, he and Jennifer shared a cigarette, which they passed back and forth, and that's how his DNA must have got under her fingernails. David said he left after that. Thursday, December 19th, 2024. David was absent from court when the verdict was read. He was found guilty and could face up to life. He is due to be sentenced on January 21st, 2025. Now we have to go back to 1989 for the crime that got him convicted and sentenced to life in the first place. By the way, he had been denied parole 2 times for the 1989 murder. December 7th, 1989, at 3:20 p.m., 36-year-old Margaret Ball was found dead on her living room floor by the 11-year-old daughter of Margaret's boyfriend. She had been beaten and stabbed in the abdomen and chest. Her home was located in the 19,200 block of Lowell Avenue, which was an unincorporated part of Hayward and part of Castro Valley. According to Margaret's family and friends, David and Margaret were neighbors in San Leandro, and Margaret sometimes babysat for his daughter. He had done some odd jobs for Margaret, but he had become aggressive and violent toward her. She became terrified of him. Margaret's 1981 Mazda had been stolen along with her purse, food stamps, and $85 in cash. The following day at 5:45 a.m., police arrested David in front of the Farmhouse Motel in Oakland when they saw him getting into Margaret's Mazda. At trial, David's father testified on the day of the murder. David came home and confessed to murdering Margaret. He told his father he was high on meth and robbed her. Eventually, David had made a confession saying he and Margaret were having consensual sex, but Margaret pulled away and wanted him to stop. David slapped her and she pulled a knife on him, which angered him, and he accidentally stabbed her in the struggle for the knife. In 1990, he was convicted and sentenced to life. Sadly, that is all I know about Margaret Ball. There were only a few articles published around the time of her death, and her story got retold in parts when David was linked to Jennifer Duey and Michelle Xavier. After charges were filed against David in the Jennifer and Michelle Xavier murders, Hayward Police Department reached out to Fremont Police asking them if they would share their file on David Misch. They were looking to see if he could be involved in the 1988 kidnapping of 9-year-old Michaela Garecht. Michaela's story received national attention on many television shows, including America's Most Wanted, Unsolved Mysteries, Dateline, and Oprah, to name a few. In September 2020, retired 49ers quarterback Joe Montana also made a public plea to help solve Michaela's case after a female intruder, Sodzai Dalzell, was found in his Malibu home attempting to abduct his 9-year-old grandchild who was sleeping in the living room. Joe had made a plea to the public around the time of Michaela's abduction back in 1988 as well. 3 months later, on December 21st, 2020, charges were filed against David Misch in connection with Michaela's abduction. A partial palm print and partial thumbprint were found on the handlebars and fork of a scooter Michaela had been riding and were matched to David Misch. Michaela Garecht was born on January 24, 1979. She was one of 3 children, but her mother was pregnant with the 4th. When a new family moved into Michaela's neighborhood, she noticed a little girl about her age. One day, Michaela knocked on the front door of the home and said she noticed they had a girl about her age and was wondering if they could be friends. The girl's name was Katrina, but she went by Trina. Trina and Michaela became friends and were inseparable. The morning of November 19th, 1988, Michaela and Trina asked their parents' permission to go to the store to buy some candy and soda pop. The girls were dressed the same that day so they could be twins. Trina and her brother had scooters, so Michaela borrowed Trina's brother's scooter and the two girls rode to the Rainbow Supermarket, which was a few blocks away. They parked their scooters near the entrance. Michaela had $5 to spend. She bought Laffy Taffy, beef jerky, and Mountain Dew with her money. The girls came out of the store and started to walk home, but then realized they had forgotten the scooter, so they turned around. If only they had kept walking. They went back to find the scooter Michaela had been riding was missing. They searched for it, and it was found further down in the market parking lot. When Michaela bent down to pick it up, a man with dirty blonde hair grabbed Michaela by the waist and pulled her into a brown or gold four-door car with missing hubcaps and possibly had cement splattered on it. Trina ran back into the store and an employee called the police to report the kidnapping. A search of the area took place both on ground and by helicopter, but Michaela was gone. A sketch of the man with the description was released, and missing flyers with Michaela's picture were distributed. Within a week, 40,000 flyers had been passed out. Throughout the decades, Hayward police had interviewed many men in prison for child abductions and murders, including Philip Garrido, after J.C. Ducard was found based on the timeline of both abductions, Philip's hair resembling the man in the sketch, and girls looking similar to each other. However, at the time of Michaela's abduction, Philip was in a halfway house 20 miles away. Michaela's family and friends still held vigils in honor of Michaela throughout the decades. Michaela's mother, Sharon, led the charge and tied ribbons to the tree near the spot where Michaela had been abducted. When police informed Sharon they had a suspect in her daughter's disappearance, she thanked the police for all their work over the years. She knew they cared about her daughter because they had Michaela's picture hung in their office, which the police said they called Michaela's room. Sharon said she accepted the fact her daughter is no longer alive but wants to know where her daughter's remains are. She went on to say, "I don't want to see him. I don't want to meet him. I don't want to talk to him. He doesn't even really seem like a human being to me." Unfortunately, Sharon never got her wish. She was diagnosed with a terminal illness and passed away in 2022. David is still awaiting trial for his involvement in Michaela's abduction. Her body has never been found. I am not sure this is the end of David's victims. Evolving technology helps solve cold cases every day. He has left behind living victims in his reign of terror, which began when he was 16 years old. So far, these are the crimes he is known to have committed. 1977. David broke into a neighbor's home, attacked a housekeeper in a sexual manner at knife point, and attempted to strangle her. The housekeeper was able to break free after she kicked him in the stomach. He was arrested and charged as a juvenile and served a brief prison sentence. He was paroled in 1979. In 1979, a few days after his release, he broke into another neighbor's house. Naked from the waist down, he held a mother and her two children at knife point, but left the home without harming the family. He was arrested again, but this time sent to a psychiatric facility. September 1981, psychiatrists released him believing he was no longer a threat to the public. June 1982, he attacked and beat a foreign exchange student into unconsciousness. He began to drag her body, but that attracted attention of the neighbors. He hopped in his truck and fled the scene. Witnesses were able to give a description of his pickup truck and the name of the dealership on the back of the vehicle. Police were able to trace it back to David Misch. He was arrested and convicted. He served close to 4 years in prison. Remember those unsolved murders I mentioned between 1983 and 1984 earlier in the story? This rules him out because he was incarcerated during those years. Late 1985 or early 1986, David was released from prison after serving time for the attack on the exchange student. He did odd jobs to make money and moved in with a girlfriend. February 1st, 1986, David murdered Jennifer and Michelle. November 1987, David's girlfriend gave birth to a son. The infant died at 3 months old in February of 1988. 1988, David was jailed for theft and spent several months in jail. He was released in November 1988. Soon after his release, he had abducted Michaela. His son is buried right across the street from the Rainbow Supermarket in the Chapel of Chimes Cemetery. April 1989, David once again jailed for theft and released on November 17th, 1989. December 7th, he murdered Margaret Ball. Who knows how many more murders or attempted abduction will be linked to David. He is a heinous human being. Now it's time to remember the victims. I hope the ones he terrorized and lived through it have healed. I hope the 11-year-old girl who found Margaret Ball has healed. I hope Trina, the girl who saw Michaela get kidnapped, is a little closer to healing. At a preliminary hearing for David in January of 2023, she had to look into the eyes she recognized as being those of the monster who took her friend, and she was still suffering from survivor's guilt. Michaela's family were victims too, for the loss of their loved one, and additionally, Sharon admitted to becoming overprotective of the other children, and she limited their freedom after Michaela went missing. For at least 10 years after Michaela went missing, Sharon continued to buy her birthday gifts and even a graduation gift. Michaela Garecht was described as a bright, shining light who was full of joy and happiness. She was independent, smart, and strong. Margaret Ball, who had at one time befriended the man who would turn on her in the most worst way, I hope she is resting in peace. Jennifer Duey had won several medals from swimming competitions. Her mother said she loved accounting and planned to continue studying it. Her plans were to finish at Olin College and then transfer to a university. She was described as friendly and outgoing. Michaela Xavier had been a cheerleader for all 4 years she attended high school. Her mother considered her her closest confidant. She said Michelle was hoping to be promoted to buyer at Nordstrom's. She was also described as friendly and outgoing. I hope the families of the victims have gotten a bit of closure. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you on the next video.